Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us. We have our next presentation, which is going to be modeling tips and tricks presented by Lyndsey Weber. So with that, let me hand it over to you, Lyndsey.
All right, thank you, Brendan, so much. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So hi, everybody. Great to meet you. I am sure there's a bunch of folks on the call that I have not yet had the chance to meet officially yet, so I'd love to do that. But I joined Quantrix in January of this year, so relatively new to the team, but super excited to see how much we've done this year and all the things coming out in 21.2. I'm super pumped to be able to use as well. So here we are for modeling tips and tricks. Brad teed up a lot of the things that we'll use to talk about today. Really, the focus of this session is going to be how you can upgrade your model's user experience. So the key points that we'll talk about and we'll demo today are how you can really build a story into your model or a workflow for your users to help it feel more like an integrated application that they're using. And so we'll show you how you can do that using a really basic script, as well as incorporating those into some buttons to give you a really nice workflow through your model. Then we'll switch gears just a little bit and we will take a deeper dive into what Brad mentioned about having hierarchical data in your model, and we'll show you how you can actually do a drill down or a roll up of that data directly on a canvas. And yes, we will reveal all the secrets on how you can copy that and do it in your own models. So with that, let's jump into our first model here, which should look pretty familiar. So as Brad had mentioned, this is our all new basic tutorial model that we publish on our website, and very soon it will be included within the product itself so that new users and also trialers will have the ability to get really a crash course in Quantrix. This model in particular is meant to be pretty short and sweet. The goal is that a brand new user in Quantrix could complete this model in 30 minutes to an hour and at least have enough knowledge of how Quantrix works to get going and start exploring on their own. And the key feature that we use in this model is scripted buttons. So whether you're a longtime Quantrix user or maybe new to the product, scripted buttons are a great way to give users the ability to navigate through your model. So all of these buttons across the top here are scripted buttons. So in this tutorial model, the idea is that the user can go through at their own pace, step by step, and really just use these buttons to navigate through the different views of the model that we want them to have to work through. And the other benefit of this, of course, is for new users, oftentimes the model browser is a brand new concept. And so this is a great way to kind of guide them very easily and intuitively through the model without having to instruct them on how to use the model browser and get all of their windows and their tabs oriented correctly. So how do we do this? How do we use scripted buttons in this model? Well, the first step is making sure that we've set up the right perspectives for our model. So obviously we just clicked through a handful of those, but if we jump to one of these in particular, let's say formulas 1, you can see that with perspectives, you can not only include canvases and matrices, but you can also include things like the functions toolbar, the format toolbox, and other aspects of what you have the ability to view in Quantrix as well. So again, really you're able to customize and configure the exact perspective or the exact view that you want your user to have within each of these, utilizing the perspective feature here in Quantrix. So to build this tutorial model, we defined all of these different perspectives to line up with our topics. And then, of course, we implemented these scripted buttons. So how did we do that? Well, if I come to our script manager here and pop this open, similar to what Brad had already shown, we've got a handful of scripted actions here within our script library, and I'll pop open a couple of these so that we can see. Brad said he had the world's easiest script. I tend to argue that this one is probably a little bit simpler even. So if you are new to scripting, don't be intimidated. This could be the perfect place to start. All we've got in each of these scripted actions is a one-liner script using a single method here that's called open perspective. It does exactly what it sounds like. And within the method here, we're just specifying the name of the perspectives that we established here. So when you click the basics scripted button on the canvas, of course, it's going to open the basics perspective for us. So again, very basic here, kind of introductory level scripting, but if you are new to scripting, this is a great way to start playing around and experimenting with it. So, once you've created your perspectives, you've written that really easy script for each of your buttons, it's really just as simple as grabbing that scripted action and dragging it over into your canvas, which you can do directly from the script manager, or you can also do from up here within the kind of the canvas editing toolbar as well. We could select it from here and put it on. Obviously, as you see here, we've also formatted our buttons to be a different color, different font, and things like that. So you can really get a nice, sleek look and feel to your model with these different scripted buttons. All right, so this is a really basic example to get us started. So let's take it up a notch further here, and I'm going to switch models and also show you another sneak peek at what's coming here in 21.2 with our new, more robust training series. So as Brad had mentioned here, we're going to have 6 lessons in total that are going to take you a little bit deeper into what you need to know to start modeling in Quantrix. So as Brad had highlighted, this isn't going to be absolutely everything that somebody's going to need to replicate their custom business model, but this should get them pretty dangerous pretty quickly here. So these models are a lot more in-depth and usually take, I would say, an hour or 2 to complete. So this is really for our new Quantrix users who are going to be spending a lot of time in Quantrix and either maintaining a model or maybe trying to build one from scratch. So this is lesson 2 in our series here on structure, and similar look and feel to our tutorial model. You can see we've got these scripted buttons here that are essentially defining the topics that we have included in this lesson. But we've gone a step further. So if I click into this first topic here, you can see again, our perspectives are linked. We've got the ability for the user to read through and then practice side by side. But we've also featured these previous and next buttons, which are new, but obviously we all understand what they do. If we click next, we're going to be taken to page 2, which is structure continued, more information here. And the user can essentially navigate through the entire model simply by clicking next or previous. And again, it makes it very easy as well if something becomes unclear or a user thinks that they missed a step. Obviously, you can easily go back to a previous page or even previous -2 or anything like that. So how do we do this in Quantrix? Well, we're going to use a lot of the same methods that we did in that initial tutorial model with our perspectives, but with a couple tweaks. So if you look at our perspectives in this model, instead of naming them by the topic or describing the content, we've actually numbered them as pages. So if you like this approach and you can think of a use case where you'd like to utilize these previous next buttons, I would recommend creating all of your perspectives. First, name them by the content or the description of what they hold. And then after you've built all of your perspectives, go ahead and rename them and number them in the order that you want. If you have a model that has a lot of perspectives, some of our later training models in this series have more than 6 different pages. You might want to have a matrix where you just organize all of your perspectives, what they contain, what the names are, and then keep that page number actually stored in that matrix to help you keep track as you map out the rest of your model and the workflow that you want to have. So these are our perspectives. So let's open the script manager again here to see how we do this with the next and the previous buttons. So if we open the script manager, we'll see a couple common aspects here again that we spoke about. So structure intro and structure continued. These are our 2 main topic buttons, or for the purpose of the illustration here, let's call these our chapters, right? If this was a book, these are our chapter names right here. So if we open structure intro, for example, you can see here's our handy dandy open perspective script here, referencing page 2 perspective. But the other thing that we've added to this script is a navigator value assignment. So nothing fancy here. We've got a single cell matrix that we built for this model, and we've called it navigator. And essentially, this is what we're using to track the page number or the perspective number that we want to use and trace throughout the model and as the user is navigating through the model. So again, using our book metaphor here, this intro structure section is the chapter, and always that chapter is going to start on page 2 here. So we need to make sure that we anchor that so that if for some reason the user wanted to skip to chapter 2, section 2, for example, and use the previous and next buttons from there, we need to ensure that Quantrix maintains the proper order of our perspectives for us as the user clicks those buttons. So if we open the next script, let's take a look at this one. So again, open perspective everywhere throughout these training models. You'll see it's a really powerful script, and it's really easy to use and write. And essentially, next is doing exactly what we would think it would do. So instead of hard coding in our full perspective name, obviously we named all of our perspectives as page something. So we have page as the beginning of the perspective, and then we're putting in just a little bit of logic within this open perspective method to say, when I click the next button, go ahead and increment a 1 to the current value that's in this navigator. So essentially turn a page forward. So similarly, as you can probably guess, previous looks almost identical, except we're of course, subtracting a single page number from that perspective. So for all intents and purposes, we're really turning Quantrix into your favorite e-reader by allowing you to move forward and backwards however many pages or perspectives that you want within your training model. So I've kept the navigator matrix up here, again, through the use of perspectives, kind of handy, so that of course we could jump into any point in this model. You can see the page number or the perspective number is returned. And from here, we could easily move back a couple pages, a couple perspectives, or we could continue to move forward through the remainder of the model. So again, very easy, I would say introductory level scripting. So if you like this approach, it's pretty easy to get the hang of, doesn't require a lot of complicated logic. So great way if you've got a model that has either a workflow or a very specific order that users need to be guided through your model, whether that's for training purposes or for user input purposes or even auditing purposes. These scripted buttons are a great way to do that. And you could even boost the feature even a little bit more by assigning roles that a user has, right? Under security, we could create a role or use existing roles that we have in our model and actually assign a default perspective to that user as well. So really customize the individual user's experience within your model through the combination of these things. So we think that's highly useful and really gives us the streamlined approach that we wanted this to have for new users who may not be fully comfortable navigating directly through the model browser and getting all of their tabs oriented. We wanted to do all of that work for them. All right, so let's jump into the hierarchy data. So I'm going to switch models one more time here, and we should see a table here on a canvas. So obviously everybody, I would say for the most part, has data sets within their model that are hierarchical in nature, whether that's city state level data, product subgroup level, product brand level, regional data, sales data that you're grouping by different characteristics. So this is very common to want to be able to model and to view in Quantrix by those different levels of hierarchy. So how can you do that? Well, we're looking here at a finished product, and we'll take you all the way back down to the initial baseline on how we did this. But you can see with this data set, we've got cities and we've got some states, and depending on the selection that I make here in input, whether I want to see details or summary, we can actually expand and collapse our entire set of data to see the data at different levels of the hierarchy. So for example, right now we're seeing the total revenue and population for the state of New Hampshire, but if we were to click details, you can see the individual city level information for the cities within New Hampshire as well. So all of this is dynamic and very easy and intuitive for a user to be able to come through and expand or collapse, drill down or roll up their data at any level they might like. So let's show you how you can do this. So the data set that we're going to use, I'm going to pop up here for us, is a two-dimensional flat table of data. So very similar to what Brad used in his demo earlier. You can see that within this data set, we define the different levels of the hierarchy and the relationships between items at each level. So for example, Portland is mapped to the state of Maine, right? So we see this all the way through, and this is really important to be able to do the mapping of the hierarchy data as we were seeing on that canvas. So let's go ahead and build this from scratch and show you one way that you can handle this type of data set. So if we open a brand new model here, let's go ahead and pull in that city data that we just showed. And Brad featured this a little bit earlier, but we're going to use import data and bring in from a text file. And our city data is right here. So we'll pop it open in the data import configuration pane here. And the first thing we're going to do is bring city down as our category. So you can see here are all of our city names. And obviously we want to group these or view them at a state level sometimes. So Brad had already teed this up, but we'll recap it here really quickly. We could, of course, bring state down as the category here next to city, but this isn't ideal because in most cases, we don't want to show all of these cities under all of these states, right? There's a unique relationship between the city names and the state. So instead of bringing these in as separate categories, we can take state and drop it directly on top of the city items. And what happens when we do that? Well, again, Quantrix is detecting the hierarchy within our data set, that 2D flat table, and it's automatically generating the groups for us based on the relationships between those items at those levels. So this is really cool, really powerful, and hopefully this is something that gets you guys excited and you have some ideas on how you could apply this to your model as well. So we'll go ahead and bring in our revenue and our population data as well. And we'll go ahead and bring this into our matrix. And I'll just rename this, right click, rename the matrix from the tab. I love this feature. I use this all the time. We'll call this city data. Okay, so the next thing we need in order to do that drill down, roll up functionality on the canvas is we need a place to anchor the data at each level of our hierarchy. So I'm going to use total items to do this. So the first total item I'll create is at the full category level. So we'll insert our summary item here, and I'm just going to call it total. And I want to see it at the very top, so I'll just move it all the way up. And then for each of our states, I'm going to add the same thing here. So at the lowest level of each group, I'm adding our total items one by one. And you might be thinking at this point, okay, this is pretty cool, Lyndsey, but my data set is way larger than this one. I have not only 2 levels in my hierarchy, but I've got 4,000 items. Then you definitely don't want to miss the next session coming up that's going to be led by Ben. He's going to show us a working example of a script that will actually automate a huge amount of what I'm showing you now. So just a teaser, get your popcorn ready. Don't miss the next session that's going to be led by Ben because it's really awesome. Okay, so now we've got our city data, we've got all of our total items in here. So now we need to configure the drill down functionality for the canvas. So the way that we're going to do that is by using a new matrix that I'll just pull over here to the side. And I'm going to call this filtery city. And we're going to bring our city category over here, drag and replace. Again, awesome new feature here. And we're going to create a few items here across the top that we're going to need for our canvas to establish our filters. So the first item I'm going to create is going to be input. And then I'm going to have input value, which will essentially write a little bit of logic for on whether we choose summary or details, what we want Quantrix to return. I'm going to have an item that I'm going to call filtered to anchor our filter on the canvas too. So this is kind of the deciding factor on what the user sees or what gets hidden from the user on the canvas. And then I'm going to have an individual item for each level that's represented in our hierarchy here. So now we've got these 5 different columns. Ahead of time, I've actually brought in and copied the formulas that we're going to use here. So I'm just going to click copy and paste, and you can take a quick peek at those if you like. We're not going to cover them in a great amount of detail here because Ben, again, is going to do a little bit of work here, kind of breaking down what we're doing. And again, sneak preview, his script actually does a lot of this work for us. So if you are worried about writing all of these formulas for all of the levels of your hierarchy, don't fret, just tune into the next session to see Ben make the magic happen. So a couple more things we need to do here. I'm going to go ahead and constrain the input on our input item here so that the user can select from either summary or details as our two options. I'll click OK. And we'll put this in here. And so now you can see we can populate here with summary. And I'm just going to copy all of these and go ahead and paste over for all of our totals to be pre-populated with our summary values. Okay, so now we have our configuration matrix here where we're able to select input or summary. Input value is defining essentially just a 1 or a 0 for if we want to see the children within the hierarchy or not. And then, of course, level 1, level 2, and filtered are all essentially defining for us if a certain child's parent should be collapsed or expanded, then we should follow accordingly based on the hierarchy. So as a quick example here that I'll demonstrate, currently the total of our city data here is summary. If I switch this over to details, you can see that we are now making sure that we show, in particular, the total summaries for all of our states. And then, of course, if we were to click details, for example, here, you can see that all of the children within Maine now have 1 as the filtered value, which means that we're going to show all of the city data for the children under the Maine total. So we'll show how that works now on the canvas. I'm going to reset these to summary. And let's go ahead and create our canvas. So here's our canvas. I'm going to bring over our filtered data here, our configuration. We'll bring over all of our city data as well. And I'm just going to snap these two matrices together horizontally for us. And I'll keep all of our checkboxes populated and filled out here. We want this behavior to be included in our snapped matrix. So I'll click OK. And now I'm going to write just two super basic filtered expressions to give us the user experience of the drill down roll-up functionality that we want on this canvas. So the first filter that I'm going to apply, I'm going to put across this top total item here. So we'll right click and add a filter. And this one's going to be by an expression. And essentially, I just want to show the items across the top here that are called input, right? So this is where the user has the ability to control the drill down functionality. So we'll click OK here. So now you can see that we've automatically collapsed the other items that are in that city filter matrix. And then we'll apply an even simpler filter to the top here on input to control which items in the rows we want to see or that we want to hide. So in this case, as we mentioned, within our filter city matrix, the kind of ruling item that defines what we show or what we hide is that filtered column name. All right, so the filtered item. So we'll just type in filtered here and we'll press OK. And so now you can see, if we switch over into interact mode here, we by default put everything as summary. But if I expand the total here to see details, now we see the totals by state. And then we could pick any of these states, click details, and now you'll get to see the individual city level population revenue data and the totals for each of those cities and their states. So you can continue to do this, drill up, drill down, however you'd like to see it. All of this is very easy to do right here from the canvas. The other benefit, and I won't steal the thunder from what Ben is going to show you, but as I think most people know, because this city data is an import, as you add additional cities or states, this matrix is going to continue to expand and grow for you. If you add an additional level to your hierarchy, there's a couple things that you'll have to reconfigure, but again, stay tuned for Ben, because he'll talk about quite a few of those things and how you can really automate this and make it really robust and powerful. So one other thing that I will show, we've got this snapped matrix that's really interactive and I think pretty slick to be able to drill down or roll up all of the data in your hierarchy. If you have an interest in being able to also see the visualization of this data, we've got this canvas that I prepared ahead of time for this, but we've pulled in the same city data here from the matrix into an interactive chart. And all we've done is, if I click off of this, let's show the table view here. You'll notice that we've got our same city data here, And I've put a filter on the top here to define, again, which cities and states that we want to show. And you will see that this expression looks very familiar, right? So we've applied the exact same filter here to our table view of the data in the visualization as we have over here on the input item. So what happens because of this, if we just hide this back quickly here, I'm just going to delete it. If we flip back into interact mode, I think this is pretty slick. Now our hierarchical data in our matrix view over here is actually completely synced with the visualization that we have on the right. So not only can you do the drill down from the table view, but you can see all of the different items that we've got displayed based on this table over on the right in our chart as well. So really cool, pretty slick, depending on the type of data that you're working with. If you want something that is really dynamic like this, that gives you the ability to drill down or to roll up, this is a pretty slick way to do that. And again, just to hit home the point that within data import, this grouping functionality is actually not entirely new. This is something that's existed for quite some time, but does require that your data set is two-dimensional and that you have a place where you're defining the individual relationships between items at each level. But if you do have that in your data set, this is something that is very powerful, especially if you're wanting the ability to display that data for a user that gives them the ability to drill down or to summarize that data at different levels of the hierarchy. So I am going to pause right there and see where we are. I think we went through that just a little bit fast, but I will unshare my screen for a moment and see if there are any questions.